I'm just here this afternoon just to give you an overview, a very quick overview about the work that I do in Sight Cymru. I'm not sure whether you are all aware of Sight Cymru, but Sight Cymru is a sight loss organisation based in Pontypool. So we support people with sight loss in a variety of ways. So we've got a team of rehabilitation officers who go out to people's houses. We've got eye clinic liaison officers who are based in the hospitals to support, to be the link almost between the individual and the hospital. We offer all sorts of things, emotional support, clubs, all sorts of things. My role, though, in Sight Cymru is to raise awareness of sight loss amongst organisations in the public sector, private and voluntary sector. So this is what I'm here to talk to you about this afternoon. I'm not going to give you a session because the aim of this session then is just to give you a tiny taster of the things that I cover. And then if you are interested in having a full session for your organisation, we can organise one after today. But this is just to give you a taster of the sort of things that I do cover, if that's okay. So I'll share my screen. I've got a very quick PowerPoint. I haven't given you my whole presentation, my training presentation, but I pulled a few slides from it. And let's have a look. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great. Okay, brilliant. Patrick, if you've got any questions, either put them in the chat or just you can ask them throughout it, or feel free to save them at the end. Patrick, are you okay to monitor the chat?
Yes, yeah, sure.
Great. Okay, brilliant. So if you were to have a training session for your organisation, it's very flexible. So I do them throughout the day and also in the evenings. I've done a lot of county training sessions for county councils, and because of the councillors, because they work in the day, they prefer to have it in the evening. So I've done a few evening sessions. So it's very flexible. They last approximately about 2 hours. Each session lasts about 2 hours, but again, that can be flexible. So I'm doing one on Thursday, for example, but they've only got an hour to spare. So I'm cramming in the main sections within an hour. I have done them for 3 hours, but largely they're about 2.5 hours. So what we cover, the aims and objectives of the training, what we cover on an ideal training are, to begin with, I show a few slides on different eye conditions. So I tell you a little bit about the main eye conditions and their effects. So I don't go into a lot of detail because if you wanted to know more, we've got a series of booklets which I can send to you. So I don't go into a lot of detail, but I just give you the main facts about various eye conditions, and it includes some pictures, some images of how things look to that person with a particular eye condition. So if there's an eye condition, for example, that impairs the peripheral vision, and the individual is left with, I suppose, a tunnel vision, I give you images that just so you can really see how a person can see really with a particular sight condition. So we start off with that, and then we talk quickly about the preventative strategies that you can encourage service users, friends, family even, to put in place so that health doesn't decline or eyesight doesn't decline. And people are always interested and quite intrigued to know that 50% of sight loss conditions are avoidable. So we talk about some of the ways that we can avoid, that we can promote good eye health, and it's things like good diet, exercise, everything that we know is good for us, our general health. It's also good for the eyes. So that's really the first section of the training. So these are the main sight conditions that I talk about. Charles Bonnet, I won't talk about a lot of them, but Charles Bonnet is often an interesting one for people because I don't know whether people have heard about it. It seems to have got more of a profile through the pandemic. And I don't know whether you watch Coronation Street, but I don't. There was a storyline on Coronation Street a while ago with someone who had Charles Bonnet. So people are always quite interested in that. And I don't know whether you know about Charles Bonnet, but quickly, it's a condition that people who have sight loss also have. So it runs in line with another sight condition. And because people's sight is very limited, the brain, I don't know how it works, the brain plays tricks, I suppose, for want of a better word, plays tricks on your vision and puts things like, we hear stories of elephants, so, or any animal. So people see an elephant in their line of vision. Obviously, there's no elephant there, but it's just the brain compensating for that lack of vision. So people see faces. A colleague of mine sees quite ugly, these gargoyle faces. And she knows they appear when she's tired. So she just says, oh, Charles, she calls him Charles, Charles, go away. And if she concentrates on something else, they can go. But a lot of people are experiencing this in lockdown, whether it's because anxiety, because people aren't as busy, as active, I don't know. We don't know. So it's a very interesting one, that. So that's, yeah, as I say, that's the first section of the training. And then the second half, I put the sight loss into a wider disability context. So might want to turn your microphones on for this, because I'm going to ask you a few questions. So I start this section by showing people this screen. So hopefully you can all see it. It's a picture of a man sitting in a wheelchair, and he's at the bottom of some steps. And by the side of him, there's what looks like a very cluttered shop, and there's two signs on the window. And at the bottom of the screen, it's asking, where is disability? So I ask that question to the group. So I'll ask you now, when you look at that screen, where do you think disability lies?
Well, for me, it's the organisation or the business that the customer's visiting.
Great, yeah. Brilliant, brilliant. Anything else?
Yeah, lack of accessibility to the structure.
Yeah, yes, brilliant, yeah. And that's exactly what I want to get out of this section. And I try to get over the main point is that disability lies within the external barriers. So it's the steps, it's the no access, it's the cluttered shop, it's the signs. So if someone has sight loss, they won't be able to see the signs. And that's really what I want to get over in this section. It's not the impairment, it's not the fact that he's got, I don't know what he's got, cerebral palsy, for example, that disables the individual. It's the wider environment. And that leads me on to talk about, I won't talk about it now, but in a general session, I talk about the social model and the medical model. And then the main part of the training really is talking about barriers. So we've learned then that what disables an individual is barriers, the physical barriers, rather than the person's impairment. So as I say, we then go on to spend a lot of time talking about barriers. And really, when we talk about barriers, they split into three sections. So we've got the environmental barriers, which are things like, you saw there's steps, cluttered environments, small writing on signs, so anything physical and tangible. Then we've got the institutional barriers, which are things like discriminatory policies, procedures, lack of funding, so things that are not so easy to spot, but things that are almost institutional or embedded in an institution. And I always give the example, say an organisation has a no dogs policy. Well, that policy is immediately going to discriminate against guide dog owners. And then the third barrier are attitudinal, and they're things like discrimination, prejudice, only seeing the impairment and not seeing the wider person, not adopting the social model, but focusing on what the person can't do. So we talk a lot about the barriers, and I get the group to carry out an exercise, and this exercise is quite specific to the organisation. So I ask the group to think of 5 environmental barriers, 5 institutional barriers, 5 attitudinal barriers that a person with sight loss may encounter when dealing with your organisation. And that just gets people to think about how you can make your organisation more accessible to sight loss, really. And that's tailored. So whatever your organisation is, I tailor the exercise to meet your needs. So then, once we've talked about barriers, we then talk about language. And I'll show you this slide because this always gets, we've had some quite heated discussions when I've done this. I've done this quite a lot of times, and I've had some quite heated discussions, and we talk about language. And I always introduce this section by saying, please don't get het up about not using the correct language, because I know it's it's something that we all tend to worry that if we're using the right term or not. But it's not about that. It's just to give people a background and discuss with people the terms and how some terms are no longer used anymore and considered negative, discriminative, largely because they're based within the medical model as opposed to the social model. So if you can see this slide here, the column on the left are fairly negative terms, whereas the column on the right are the preferred terms in accordance to the social model. I won't go through them all now, but is there anything that really stands out to you now that you think is quite interesting? No, that's fine. Well, as I say, it's quite a heated, it's quite an engaging section, this section on language. So that's something else that I cover. And then lastly, once we've talked about the social model and the medical model and the barriers, we then talk about COVID and really the extra barriers that COVID have thrown up to people, not only people with sight loss, but disability, all kinds of all disabled people. So we talk about the mental impact, the physical problems that COVID and lockdown have thrown up, overarching wide range of barriers that COVID has introduced. So that's basically it. And then the very last slide, I talk about the sight loss friendly organisation scheme. Now, this is a scheme that Sight Cymru introduced just before Christmas, and it's going well. Organisations can sign up to be part of this scheme, and how to get this status. You need to have received a training session, so the training that I'm talking about this afternoon, sorry. Receive a training and appoint a sight champion from your organisation. So a sight champion probably would be someone who received the initial training, and it would be the sight champion's role to take the issues that we talked about back to their organisation and keep them on the agenda, really. So I ask the sight champion to think of 3 pledges that they will make to make their organisation more accessible to people with sight loss. Then I ask them to report back to me, to tell me the pledges, and report back to me on a quarterly basis. Once you've done that, or once you've given me the pledges, I then send you these 2 logos. So the sight loss friendly organisation you can put on your website, wherever you want to really. And then there's one specifically for the sight champion that they can use on the bottom of their emails, or again, however they want to. I send the sight champion a monthly newsletter with bits of information that I find, events, further training, different opportunities, so anything that I come across that might be of interest. And this hasn't happened yet, but what I'm hoping to do is to create a network of sight champions. So at the moment we've got about 7 organisations signed up for this scheme. So when we have a few more, I'd like to get the sight champions together in a virtual platform such as this, so they can really share good practice, share tips, talk about problems. So that's the long-term aim, or the medium-term aim really, is to create that network. And that's about it. That's my training session. So if there is any, if you are interested in having that training, is my contact details here, and I can put them on the chat later. And please feel free to email me or contact me, and we can talk about it and perhaps come up with some dates. And that's about it. That's all that I had to say. I don't know whether anyone's got any questions.
Esther, Lisa has got a question. Is there a fee for this scheme?
No, it's all free. It's all free. The training is free, and the awareness, the sight loss friendly organisation scheme is free. It's a lottery funded project.
If anybody else has got any other questions? Yeah, Helen from Bronhaven. Does the training have to be for a whole organisation, or does it compromise individuals from various businesses who are interested?
No, again, it's flexible. So ideally, if we were to become a sight loss organisation, as many, I'd like, it would be great to have as many people as possible on to receive the training. But I understand needs of organisations differ. For example, I've delivered training to care organisations, and it's really difficult to get the carers, the people who are delivering the care service, to get all together. So it's very flexible. If you can only spare 1 or 2 people from your organisation, that's fine. And then hopefully you can feed back then to your organisation, to your colleagues. Does that answer the question? My memory's awful, so I've forgotten everything that you asked.
Yeah, is it all right to come in there, Patrick?
Yeah.
Maybe just give a little bit of background.
Yeah, carry on, yeah.
Yeah, we're going through a review of our sort of customer channels at the moment. So I'm heavily involved in our customer segmentation. So I've reached out to Sight Cymru before, but I've had nobody come back to me. So I'd love to chat with you after this, Esther, because we want to understand the needs of our customers with obviously who are visually impaired. And I think this would, in particular, I'm interested in the networking, that sharing good practice and tips, because again, one size doesn't fit all.
No.
So for me, it's sort of better understanding the needs of our customers, and for me I'd be really interested in doing this training and hopefully getting our organisation set up sooner rather than later, really. I just wondering sort of what's your timescales for this?
No, brilliant. And of course we can talk. All of the training sessions are flexible and meet the needs of the individual organisation. So I've got standard presentation, but I do tailor it to each organisation, and every organisation is different. So of course we can talk about how it's best to how best to suit your needs. As for timescales, I'm employed. The lottery project finishes in March 2022, so we've got another year. I've been doing it a year so far, so we've got another year of the funding. Who knows what will happen after then, but we're okay for the year anyway. And my long-term aim is to get this network in place, so even after the project ends, that we'll have some kind of sustainability by having this network in place. And another element, which I haven't said, is that I'm hoping to train volunteers to deliver this training. So if you do work with anyone with sight loss who would like to offer the training, come on board with me and help deliver the training, that's another element that we can work with. But yes, we've got a year to do this, so it's fine.
Got a question from Phil about what area do you cover?
All Wales. Yeah, all Wales, no problem. It's all virtual at the moment. It was supposed to be face to face, but of course it's all virtual at the moment. So yeah, so all Wales.
And Lisa's asking, does any of your training cover aspects relating to unpaid carers of people with sight loss?
Not well, I suppose maybe not specifically. I haven't covered that before, but if that is something of importance to your organisation, we can certainly cover that, and that's something I can think about when I'm putting the training together. So of course, as you can imagine, the training is different I haven't done any catering organisations, but if I was to offer this training to a hotel or a pub or restaurant, it would be very difficult, very different to a third sector organisation offering some of the services that you run, and it would be very different again to the police, which I'm doing in a few weeks' time. So it's very different. We can meet your needs. I'd have a conversation with you before the training to make sure that the training covers your needs. So yeah, of course we could do that.